So today we had another Weekly Warriors Den live stream, and this week we got all the details of the upcoming mid-season patch that will arrive next week, and surprisingly, there's a lot more than I expected. I personally thought we'd just see a few changes, but this seems to be a bigger update. So as always, I'll be going over what I found to be most important from the stream and giving you guys my thoughts on it. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So let's start off with the fight changes. As we learned a few weeks ago, revenge gain in 1v1s will be removed with this upcoming patch. But that's not the only change revenge is receiving. So on top of the 1v1 revenge gain removal, they'll be bumping up the amount of revenge you earn while you're outnumbered, to sort of compensate for not getting any revenge at all while dueling. The increase isn't drastic, but it should be noticeable. In 1v2s, the multiplier has been bumped up to 0.70, in 1v3 it's been moved up to 0.90, and in 1v4 it's been increased to 1. I can't tell you exactly how quickly you'll earn revenge just yet, but I don't think you'll be earning revenge almost instantly or anything like that, but we'll have to just wait until next week to see. I really wasn't expecting that change. I thought that they would just scrap the 1v1 revenge and be done with it, but I do think it makes sense, as you'll stand a better chance if someone comes running to join the fight, unless it's someone who can grab you, then you don't really stand a chance. Next up, Jiang Jun's Nerf will finally be arriving. Now if you haven't heard already, this nerf isn't to his attacks or damage, but to his really powerful Soothing Mist feat. Soothing Mist has been nerfed pretty heavily. If no one is around, it'll heal for 10 HP and will bump up 5 HP per opponent, all the way up to 30 health if 4 enemies are around, rather than healing for 85 if 4 enemies are around. The cooldown has also been increased to 120 seconds from 60, so that he can't use it every time there's a team fight. This was a well-deserved nerf, as it alone could turn the tides of a team fight pretty quickly and quite frequently, just making JJ a great team fighter. Also, his choke has been nerfed slightly. It doesn't have armor on it anymore, basically continuing the trend of making attacks that strip control away from a player interruptible. His damage hasn't been nerfed just yet. It'll come sometime in the future, we just don't know when. Shinobi is also receiving a few changes next week that I've already went over, so I'll speed by them. We knew that his slide tackle was going to be nerfed, and now we know to what extent. So the slide will hit at 600 milliseconds rather than 300. Again, a welcome change, as the move could be abused in duels and could easily catch you in 4s even if you knew it was coming. So now it'll be easier to dodge. And to compensate for this nerf, Shinobi can now feint the third hit of his zone, a very necessary change, as unfadeable zones are just some of the easiest attacks to parry in this game. And since zones eat a lot of stamina, if someone were to parry your zone, you'd be almost out of stamina very quickly. Now we just have to wait for this exact same change to come to Centurion, as he definitely needs it as well. Another fight change that I didn't expect to show up was that they're removing the dodge properties on unbalanced enemies, or enemies that are falling to the ground. So now you shouldn't be whiffing attacks on opponents who are falling once this next patch goes live. Along with this, some of the max punishes will be changed. We don't know whose or how drastic the changes will be, so we'll just have to wait until next week to find out. There are also a few other fight changes that I'll list off here quickly. You'll no longer get revenge for attacking minions or pikemen or archers. The feat banners will no longer disappear upon the user's death. 6 perks have been buffed to be a bit more effective so that people actually use them, and then a ton of bug fixes. Outside of fight changes, we found out that there will be some breach improvements. So there's been some general improvements and bug fixes for breach, but what I found most interesting is what they're working on and plan on releasing in the future. So UB mentions that during blowout matches, the defenders can end a match much faster than the attacking side, because obviously the defenders can drain the attackers' tickets or destroy the RAM before they even get through the first gate. So when the defending team is destroying the attackers, they can win fairly quickly. But when the attackers are steamrolling the defenders, they still have to play through a 20-minute breach game, as they have to take the RAM through the 2 gates and then finish off the commander. So they're looking into ways to change this so that blowouts aren't so boring and end a bit faster. And they mentioned that these changes would affect the current meta, so whatever they're working on is something I'm looking forward to, as I really like Breach and enjoy playing it, but the only reason I stopped playing it is because the matches are just way too long. And I'm game for anything that would speed these matches up. They also mentioned that adding a surrender option is actually something they want to add to Breach. Again, it's a welcome change, as no one likes sitting around while being destroyed. The surrender change may not come soon though, as it's not at the top of their priority list and they want to work on other things first. Another thing that was sort of brought up is that they're looking into ways to make the other game modes a bit more populated. As we talked about before, Skirmish, Elimination, and Tribute are basically dead game modes as there's hardly anyone playing these modes. Dominion, Breach, Duel, and Brawl are always the most popular modes, even during events, and honestly, I'd be happy if every mode made a comeback. I'm not sure what sort of changes they could implement to get people playing these modes, as orders don't seem to do it, and previous changes didn't do much. I'm really hoping that it's an increase in XP gain though. It probably wouldn't save the modes, but I know I'd play them more if I got some more XP for playing them. One more thing I should mention is that those breaking skulls will no longer ruin your fights, as they're changing the user interface for Dominion and Skirmish, and then they'll change it for other modes later. They'll be updating them to be like the Great Breach user interface, which is again a very welcome change, as those skulls will literally get in the way of your opponent's fight widget and you could just get smacked by something you couldn't even see. Now on to some of the other things we can look forward to next week. That mid-season event is finally almost here, and they gave us a really cool looking teaser image. The event is called Blackbriar's Riposte, and it says ready your weapons for the battle of attrition. Now this teaser doesn't give us much, but we know that the event will have something to do with the Blackbriars. We also see two crows in the image, one on Vortigern's shield and one flying next to him. Now this is just a shot in the dark, so don't take this for anything, but they mentioned that the Mask tab in the outfit section will be changed to the Illustrious tab. And since the crow is flying next to Vortigern and the shield looks like that emblem will be unlockable, I'm guessing that maybe we'll get some sort of idle effect with a crow flying around our hero, or like landing on their shoulder, or maybe hovering around and landing on a body after an execution. It's just a wild guess, but I could see it happening. I think it would be cool to have some things like that in this game. Realism doesn't exist in the Land of For Honor anyways, so a crow coming out of nowhere is believable. They could even expand it to give heroes some sort of animal to sit next to them while they're idle, like a wolf for the Vikings or a tiger for the Wulin or something. And now on to the last thing I want to talk about, the arcade changes. So they're actually doing something with the arcade mode, something that I didn't think would happen, but they're adding two new objectives to the weekly arcade quests. The first one being the kill target mode, where you'll have to eliminate the tagged enemy, and the second being a survival objective, so you'll have to fight off bots until the timer runs out. Both of these should spice up the arcade experience a bit more, as there's more to do other than just kill your 2 or 3 targets and move on to the next stage. They're also adding one of my favorite maps to the arcade, the New Harbor map, so be on the lookout for that. And finally, a very welcome change. They mentioned how arcade mode will be a little bit easier while you're fighting in higher tier quests with lower tier armor. If you've ever tried to play a high tier quest with low tier armor, you know that it was just incredibly difficult, as you could be one-shotted by literally anything. Now we're not sure exactly how much easier it'll be, but we know that you'll actually be able to do the quests if your hero isn't a high enough rep, so that you won't have to play those really boring low tier quests. I do want to say though that I'm actually sort of impressed with the size of this update. One of UB's biggest problems to me has been how slow things move along with this game, and the mid-season update doesn't completely alter things the way a seasonal update does, but it does enough to be excited for, and it does enough to have a noticeable change on the game. I do hope that next time though, if they do a bigger mid-season patch thing next season, that we see a few more fight changes. We're getting closer and closer to a point where the fighting is in a really good spot, and I think these mid-season patches could be great for improving the game and making the season feel a bit more fresh, as in about a month or so we'll all just be waiting for season 10, the season of the axe, where we get the Samurai Axe hero along with the long-awaited Lawbringer and Raider improvements. But I do appreciate that the mid-season patch is addressing things in the middle of the season versus waiting months for changes. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. I didn't go over every single little thing, but if you're interested in looking at every single little thing like bug fixes and whatnot, the patch notes are up on UB's site, and I'll link them in the description or pin it to the comments somewhere so that you can read it for yourself. And as always, I do want to hear from you guys, so talk to me down in the comments about anything we talked about in this video. And as usual, if you agree with me or just like the video, feel free to like something new, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.